And
My
then
pleasure.
next question is from Jason. By the way, if I'm going too fast for you, Maddie, let me know.
Hmm.
So the question is, when working in production in ZBrush, have you found any techniques, tips, or tricks that's helped you speed up your workflow?
Mm. Well, working in production, so like if I'm doing so if I'm doing a Z, like it depends on what I'm doing in production. So if I'm doing ZBrush for concept, I'll speed up my workflow by early on deciding what my composition is probably going to be. Like for example, on this, I'm like, okay, well, I need to show something tomorrow, so I'm going to show a head. So I'm not going to bother with the rest of the body. I'm going to do just what I'm showing. And then once I've got something established, I might only focus in on the areas I know that are going to be seen in my composition because there's not time. And I might not poly paint it. I may very well just paint it all in Photoshop because that's faster for me than poly painting. Because poly painting, you're kind of doing the whole character and you're moving around it. And I do the exact same thing in poly paint that I do in Photoshop in terms of mottling and glazing, but I'm just doing it from the view that I'm going to see. And then if it gets approved and they're like, yeah, what's it look like from the other side? You go, oh crap. But then you can very easily project your concept onto your piece as poly paint, or just sample the colors out of your piece and paint it quickly. Painting can be much faster than I think people make it. Painting can be a very quick process if you just get some confidence in it. All of this is very quick if you get confidence, and confidence comes through
Yeah,
like experience and repetition. But I think a lot of times, and nobody told me this when I was starting out, like sometimes confidence, you just have to fake it till you make it,
yep, completely
and
agree.
make big strokes, make big shapes, make big decisions. Don't use layers. Try to give yourself some time where you're not using layers because you want to avoid noodling. And I think layers invite you to just sort of noodle numerical values instead of painting your way or sculpting your way out of a mistake. So I think that can actually be quite helpful as well. It's really hard for my students when I'm like, don't use layers for this. They're like, but layers. I'm like, trust me. I painted for 10, 15 year no 10 15 years. I painted. We didn't have layers. It was an airbrush, and it's it helps. It's really helpful to have the experience of not having that. I should just go ahead and Dynamesh. There we go.
Do you, when it comes to like a continuous theme of, I guess, like speed, etc., if it was like, if you had to like generate ideas quickly, etc., say there's people tuning in, I'm sure there's plenty of people in the industry tuning in right now. Is there like a kind of benchmark or thing that you'd recommend them to kind of strive towards in terms of generating ideas? Is like maybe like 5 ideas a day, maybe just to kind of get into a rhythm of generating ideas quicker?
Um,
What would be like a healthy
I
kind of
I said
amount?
this I said this yesterday. Yesterday I was doing a class, and I say this to my students in my regular classes at Noman. Um, Best thing you can do is keep a sketchbook and treat your sketchbook like your private place. Don't treat your sketchbook like something to stress about. Never think of your sketchbook as something you need to impress anybody with. Never think of anything in your sketchbook as something like don't approach your sketchbook like, okay, I've got to fill this. Like I bet a bunch of us have like 50 unfilled sketchbooks that have like 4 or 5 drawings in them in our history, like in our
Yeah,
bookshelf or something. And that's a thing. And a lot of that comes because people um, don't ever give themselves a place to suck. Give yourself a place to do crappy little drawings that nobody ever needs to see. And it's incredibly liberating. And you'll find that like you'll get a lot of them, you'll look at and be like, hey, that's kind of neat, or I like what that happened there, or I completely ruined that thing, but 5 minutes ago it looked really cool. But like I think that's really, really valuable
yeah.
for just giving yourself the freedom to sort of think and play. And I don't think we often give ourselves that. I think a lot of times we expect too much we from ourselves and don't give ourselves an opportunity to be. I sound like a hippie. Don't give yourself an
No, I
opportunity
get
to be
like
playful, dude.
it's like
You
being
know what I mean?
organic. like,
Yeah.
do you? So this is actually a really interesting topic. So, do you think there's this kind of natural kind of mentality of over planning, as in rather than just relaxing and just like
Oh
going
yeah, yeah, yeah,
natural with it?
yeah, yeah. Like there's plenty of time to be have your work noodled at work. So
Yeah,
like just give yourself an opportunity to don't overplan, to just sort of play around. I like to most of the time when I like start an idea, I'll just start making random strokes on the canvas or in my sketchbook or in ZBrush. I'll just start moving stuff around randomly. I get my best ideas by making a bunch of random shapes and seeing what comes out of them. And that's something Leonardo da Vinci did. He had I'm no Leonardo, but he's got he had a moldy wall in his studio. He used to look at the patterns in it and get ideas from that. So um, you have we have access to a wonderful library of images in our head, and sometimes we're our own worst enemy at getting to them. So I think that sort of um, approach of breaking down that conscious sort of attachment
Yeah. Like
is
everyone
really
gets
good.
so precious, and sometimes you just need to enjoy it, and rather than think it's like always work, like
Hmm.
just kind of just take away that stress. I know it's hard for many people at times, depending on your situation, but if you just realize at the end of the day you're doing art because you enjoy it, so just go crazy with it. Like it doesn't have to be perfect lines, just get loose and crazy.
Hmm. Hmm.
Next question. By the way, like I said, let me know if I'm going too quick.
Hmm.
So Thomas is saying, "Hi, what would some of the key skills, knowledge you should have as a modeler when starting out within the VFX industry?" Oh, I think we've already answered that one. Yeah, we've already answered
Hmm.
that one.
Hmm.
I've just
Hmm.
not scored it off. But there's another question in right behind it, and it's from Adam. He's saying, "Hi, regarding anatomy, do you always create the underlying anatomy from scratch from your anatomy training and experience?"
Well, I mean, if I'm starting from a Gen man or Gen woman base mesh, some of the stuff might be there, but you're still gonna um, be sculpting stuff from scratch, like yeah. I mean, I I mean, depending on if I've been asked to do if somebody says like we need a caveman or something, I might grab a body I've already sculpted and work into that,
Yep.
just because I know that I can sculpt it because I've done it before, but I need it tomorrow, so I would probably do something like that.
Do you use the insert brushes as well, like, or is it just base meshes?
Oh yeah, I'll use insert brushes like to kit bash stuff. I like those. I love the insert brushes and vector displacement brushes. I like making vector displacement brushes. That's actually probably a really good exercise for sculpting is to open up the vector displacement brush plane and just start sculpting something on it. So I like making teeth and tongues and parts and whatnot, and then mixing them together in sort of unexpected ways. I should save my work. Press the 9 key to quick save.
Yeah, just in case you can never be too sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually a second part to this question. It's actually a wee bit more in depth. So it says, or are there techniques when you start with a pre-existing model of human or animal skeleton with muscles and ZBrush, like a figurative clay sculpture? It's quite a big question. And manipulate and model on top of that base to ensure anatomical accuracy. Right, let's try and break this down. Um, let's see.
Yeah, maybe figure out a shorter version of that and get back to me.
Yeah, well, I'll take my time.
And
I'll think about this.
I want to talk about what I'm doing right here. So
Yeah, on
I'm
you go.
unmasking this piece right here because I want to also talk about gravity. So a lot of times people will like slap an alpha on something or they'll carve some wrinkles in and they don't think about gravity. So all these wrinkles, all these folds, gravity is acting on them. So I'm going to take the move brush and move this down over this masked area. I'm going to invert my mask and maybe tuck this in just a tiny bit and bring it up and then dynamesh that. The idea being I want there to be a sense that, and this will work a lot better once we leave dynamesh, I want there to be a sense that gravity is pulling these shapes down, that they're not just sitting straight out, that they've got a sag to them. Now there is a gravity option in your brush. If you go to depth, you can turn on gravity. I don't like using it all that much. I've got a couple custom brushes I made that have gravity built into them. Um, but I like to have a little bit more direct control over it. But if you watch this, as I draw these strokes, it naturally adds a sag to them, which is very nice. So that sort of thing right there is really important, I think, to create a sense of weight and realism, is to have gravity in your wrinkles. You just have to remember to go back and turn that off, lest it put gravity on everything. But generally, I just like to mask things out, invert the mask, and then sculpt against a mask. And I'm catching shadow here. I'm just going to go in. I'm trying to create some value differences there just by catching shadow, and I'll catch light here. Maybe I want to lose that line a little bit right there in that shape. Maybe I want to build this out so it feels like there's a little sort of skeletal structure underneath here. I'll take my standard brush and build that out. And then I'll zoom in because I don't want that to be just a big rounded, dang nabbit. There we go. Take my trim dynamic brush and remember what I was saying about planes. I want to think about sort of like a plane here and here, and Dynamesh that. We're about ready to leave Dynamesh now. So I've got my shapes, my volumes here. Okay, so now we're ready to leave Dynamesh. I'm going to go to Subtool, and I'm going to save my work, just hitting the number 9. I'll go to Subtool, I'm going to duplicate my model, turn on Solo, go to Modify Topology, go to Z-Remesher, and Z-Remesh it.
Yeah, so I was looking through the question, and I'm pretty sure you actually answered it perfectly for him.
Oh, okay, cool. That's actually more dense than I need to be. So I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to set this to 3000 faces and Z-Remesh it. So I do this. I bounce back and forth between Dynamesh and Z-Remesher a lot because I prefer to have subdivision levels while I'm working. For the reasons that I talked about at the beginning, I think subdivision levels are really important. So there we go. So I've remeshed now. And what I will do is I will turn off visibility on the eyeballs. This is still visible. My original high res is just, we don't see it because I've got solo turned on. On this one, I'm going to divide it once, project, turn off color, project all. Divide it twice, project all. There we go. And now this is pretty much indistinguishable from that. That's my Dynamesh, and I can delete my Dynamesh now. And then this is the remeshed version that has subdivision levels. So I can step up and down my subdivision levels. And now I can turn my eyeballs back on, turn solo off. And now I can step down, and I can take my move brush and oops, gosh, my brush is really hard to control with the delay. And I can make big shape changes like that. Like that's been bugging me. Ah, there we go. So I can get some sense of the occipital there, back of the skull. And then I can tuck that up, and then I can mask this, and I can invert my mask. And then I can bring that back a little bit and down, get a little bit of an overhang there. I can step up my subdivision level, and I can mask this area out right here. I like this shape right here. God, the delay on that is nuts. And then I'll take my standard brush, like I was saying before, and I'll build that out and give it some gravity. Let that fold sag. Wrinkles are, or folds of flesh like that are fatty tissues that have disconnected, or skin that's disconnected from the fascia underneath because of atrophy, because of age or weight
Yeah.
or loss of weight. And so gravity will have a huge impact on them. So we want to make sure that we get that. Let's put some teeth in there because she's, Boogie Lady is so defined by that lovely big mouth of teeth. Let's actually fix this shape. This is bugging me. Kind
When
of
it
like,
comes to your creatures, like when do you decide to kind of move on to start adding detail? Like how long do you kind of push it?
probably towards the very, very, very end. And sometimes I'll just put enough detail on to capture some specular variation in the render before I take it to keyshot.
Mm-hmm.
I just think at this phase, like the details are like the least important part. I mean, these are like secondary forms that I'm working on here, but like tertiary, like really fine wrinkles and stuff like that. I mean, there's an enormous amount that goes into effectively sculpting wrinkles, like and pores, but it's not something I'm super concerned with at this stage. I think people put too much importance on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want these eyes to kind of sit inside those sockets a little bit, like that. I just kind of want them to be a little separated from the socket because I find that real creepy. I'm going to bring that out, and I want to catch a little shadow right there. I'm just looking at that area, and I'm thinking about values, you guys. I'm thinking about this in terms of like value, just like if it was a drawing or a painting, where
Hmm.
like I'm thinking about the fact that that was kind of a big area of just a very samey kind of value there, and that went too dark, so I'm gonna tweak that. I just felt like that needed something there. I also felt like anatomically I wanted something there. I'm gonna mask out the edge of the mouth here. Oof, gosh, mask out the edge of the mouth right here. Invert that mask. And I'm going to take the inflate brush. I'm just going to inflate along there just so I get a little bit of a sort of a line of demarcation there between the edges of that giant sort of face mouth thing. I like body horror and like tweaking people's I
Changing their
like
anatomy.
hmm?
Just changing their anatomy completely.
Yeah. I like playing with them. I like playing with shapes that might just sort of tweak people's expectations or make people feel a little uncomfortable. And I like a lot of like body horror stuff or taking eyes out of things. Um, there's a lot of that's another thing too. Like reading is also really good. I think for just getting ideas. Like you wouldn't think of it
Yeah.
as a visual artist, but make some time to read some stuff. There's a lot of great stuff out there. Like seriously, even if you read something like like you could read fantasy, or this might sound like weird to you, but you could read something like The Uncanny by Sigmund Freud, or
Hmm.
you could read the book I referenced earlier by Barbara Kruger. I think it's Barbara Kruger. The Monstrous Feminine, where she talks about it's literally a film theory and women's studies book about the representation of the male gaze and women in horror, and it's very inspiring because it sort of goes into it's a very Freudian book. It goes into in terms of its language, like literally it's inspired by that as him as a an influence on oh god um sorry, I just lost my words.
No, it's all right.
The postmodern kind of continental philosopher, but anyway, talks about like what it is that like makes people react in certain ways to Reagan from The Exorcist, or that and Angelina or Adriana Jani and the film The Possessed, which is an amazing movie. So it's like things like that I think are really, really kind of cool. And not
Like,
necessarily something that you think about going and looking at, but I think that sort of stuff is really nice. I like theory, I like theoretical things.
yeah.
I'm rambling.
No, but when it comes to no, it was a great point because when it comes to reading, it's your ability to like imagine what's obviously going on, and it's like interpreting the words. And when it comes to getting briefs, just on a daily basis, you have to understand of like what's the key words to kind of break down, etc. And that goes such a long way because it's your imagination you're exploring there.
Hmm.
All right, we got another question coming through. So, folks, like I said, so we've got half an hour left of the space, but just we'll base it once again around the questions. So, if the questions keep going, the project's looking great, so keep them coming. Like I said, it's a 2 hour slot, so this is your chance to ask as many questions as you want. So, take part, get involved. So, the next question is, as a complete beginner in the world of creature design, sculpting and modeling, what advice would you give in regards to with starting out, especially in the sense of a major career shifting?
Um, I think getting an idea of what it is that you want to do, because I mean, there's jobs as like a generalist. You can work as a generalist and do um, any type of modeling, or you can focus in on organics and realize it might be harder as a new artist to do the fun creature stuff that you want to do. You might find yourself having to do things that are not your first choice. But and in terms of demo reel, I suppose some of the things that I said earlier would be really, really useful.
Hmm.
Um, so hopefully that answers the question.
Perfect. It's kind of like spin the question around as well. So you've traveled a lot, you've worked in different places, different countries, etc. Is there
Hmm.
any advice you would give to people about maybe changing things up and actually maybe going to a different country? And like, what advice would you give them?
Um, it's it may be harder to go to a different country if you haven't worked yet in the country that you're in,
Hmm.
because typically it costs a company money to sponsor a visa. But if you can go to a different country, I think you could go to New Zealand with a certain amount of ease if you're from the UK. Um, um, I'm just sorry, I'm just trying to tweak this tooth here. I think working overseas is interesting. It's really. I mean, I've been an expat for most of my adult life, and
Yeah,
I don't even identify with my country of birth anymore. It feels strange when I go back there. It doesn't feel like home. You know, I was in New Zealand for 10 years, and I I love it here. This is my home,
yeah,
and I've it gives you such a wonderful perspective on the world to be in a different place, to be the one with the accent, to be, you know, like just other. I don't
yeah.
know. It's
No,
just
it's okay. It's a
it's a
tough
nice
question.
experience.
It's
It is.
it's
It's a big question.
it's all about I guess like for me, like I've moved many times. I've now moved 14 times, so I've been like moving all the time, etc. And have family all around the world. And I get the occasional question when it comes to my podcast about what's it like working over here. And once again, the only way to kind of figure that out is by trying it, or at least giving something a go. And if you can't afford it, just take like small leaps, like maybe just moving town in your country. And once again, that's another big move, but you don't know until you try it, and it might lead you in the right direction. But at the end of the day, it's all about answering questions and figuring out what you want to do, because it goes back to what Maddie was saying earlier about it's all about career decision choices, etc. So it's a great question, by the way, Afra, much appreciated. Right, let's have a look here. But thanks once again for everything that you've said today in today's masterclass. It's been such a privilege
Oh,
having you on the
thank you.
show. It's been
Thank you.
great. Right, so we've got one last question.
Hmm.
So unless anyone wants to get more coming, but it is slowing down. But from Daniel, he's saying, I'm just starting out with ZBrush. When you transfer detail from a high-res sculpt onto a Z-remesh copy, why is it better to subdivide plus project and then subdivide and reproject again?
Hang on just one second. I'm actually reading my interface right now. Sorry,
That's okay.
access.
No worries.
Okay, so repeat the question.
Sure. So the question is, I'm just starting out with ZBrush. When you transfer detail from a high-res sculpt onto a Z-remeshed copy, why is it better to subdivide and project and then subdivide and reproject again?
Oh, because if you subdivide and project, ZBrush has fewer vertices to look at as it goes. So if you divide a bunch of times and then project, it's going to look at like a million polygons. But if you do it once, project, one more time, project, one more time, it has fewer that it has to process.
Perfect. Thanks for answering that.
Hmm.
And by the way, folks, if you guys don't know, we've talked about books as well throughout today's masterclass. Make sure to check out her books as well. She's got 4 books that she's written, incredible books. I highly recommend you to check them out. So if you guys, once again, want to find her website and her all her artwork, make sure to check out at maddiemonsters.com. And if you guys happen to join us a wee bit later in today's masterclass, and there's no need to panic. When it comes to these masterclasses, they're all recorded, so they will be getting uploaded to the masterclass section on caveacademy.com. So make sure to check out there if you want to go back to maybe a specific part that Madeleine's talked about in today's masterclass. But I'll give it a few more minutes and
Yep. So
um,
if I can just cut you off, sorry.
yeah, on you go, fire away.
Thank you. So right, back to this. I want to use that tooth insert mesh brush that I made. So I'm going to duplicate the model because insert mesh brushes have to be used on a mesh that only has one subdivision level. So God, frustrating. I'm not trying to zoom. It's just deciding. like every third or fourth stroke is not something that I have intended to do. There we go. I'm going to isolate the length of the face here. Come here. Stop doing that. The length, the length of the face. Sorry. There we go. All right, so I'm going to isolate this area here, and I'm going to step down a couple subdivision levels. Let's solo that. I'm going to go to geometry, delete lower, delete higher. So this creates a proxy mesh that just has one subdivision level. So now I can use this mesh insert brush that I've made. I'm going to go to the brush controls, and I'm going to turn depth down. So that means when I take this tooth here and then draw it in there, and I need to be careful about it being symmetrical. Let's turn off symmetry. So it draws at that depth. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to go to brush, turn my depth down, click and drag. There we go. So now I can start drawing these teeth in there like this. And I've got a few of these. I made a couple variations. So I'm going to go to this one, turn my depth down. And this one's a little bit more like a needly kind of shape here. So let's change that one. Now I'm going to do a bad thing because we don't have a lot of time. We're going to run out of time. So I'm going to mirror the teeth.
And we
But
still got 20 minutes, so we have
oh,
23
okay.
minutes, so plenty of time.
Okay, cool. All right, good. I was getting the impression that we were running out.
Oh, it's
So
just because there's certain questions that was just stopping, but no, take your time. There's no rush whatsoever.
cool. So what I will do is I'll mirror these teeth across and then introduce asymmetry. So that's another thing too, is like making things symmetrical. Like I try to introduce asymmetry earlier than I have at this point here. I haven't brought any asymmetry in just yet until just now, because it makes a big difference when you've got asymmetrical elements in there. So I try and give myself an opportunity to make things asymmetrical sooner than later. Um, so I want these teeth to be real clustered down here and maybe even coming out this way. I should probably change to that other tooth again so there's some variation. So yeah, there we go. 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 It's stuck again. There we go. And I'm going to press the 9 key. I just got this paranoid feeling I needed to save. Oops.
I've got a question of my own. I'm very curious to see what you're going to say for this. So, when it comes to all the creatures that you've made, has there been like a particular one that's been the most challenging in terms of like actually like design and bring it together?
Everything probably has its own kind of challenges. I think
Yeah,
if it's not challenging, then it's kind of like, and if you're just, then you might just be phoning it in. So I think
yeah,
everything's got its own kind of unique challenges.
definitely.
Feathers are very hard. The hardest things in the world to sculpt, I think, are feathers, fur, and hair, and fire, and smoke, and water, because that's all stylized.
Yeah,
They don't have like their own set form quite so much. So there's always a stylization to them that can be a real challenge. So I'm just going to put a few of these in here. I think it might be kind of neat because there's going to be little hairs up there. It might be fun to put some teeth up here too. So let's put some teeth in here. And I should change up my teeth again, make sure I've got some variation in them. And I'm going to zoom out. Maybe we can actually make a couple of these teeth a little bit bigger, maybe. Something like that. Take my move brush and just tuck those bases in, or those roots, I should say. And go back to my toothbrush. And we'll draw a couple more here.
It's so impressive how you do this so quickly.
Thanks. Okay, so I've drawn those teeth in there, so I'm going to Control Shift click on my proxy mesh to hide it, and then go to Geometry, Modify Topology, Delete Hidden, and that gets rid of that. And then I will go to, I'll just use the script for it. I'll go to Z plugin. I'm going to save before I run it because sometimes it crashes on me. I'm going to go to Z plugin, subtool master mirror, and I will not make them one subtool. I'm going to make the other set of teeth another subtool. So I have mirrored the subtool across, and now I will, or I don't see it because I have solo turned on. There we go. So now I've got those two sets of teeth. So I want to tweak them around. So sorry, just one second. My mom's calling me.
For a second, I thought it crashed because it went so quiet.
No. She forgot that I told her I was teaching. So.
That's all right.
Okay, so I'm on this one. So I'm gonna go to the move brush and just scooch the roots of those teeth in where they were poking out. And I'm gonna come over to this set here. Alt click on those to select them, go to frame mode, and I want to make sure they all have a different poly group. So I'm going to go to poly groups, auto group. And a very, very quick way of sort of tweaking these is take the move brush, turn it up to 100%, go to brush, go to auto masking, and turn mask by polygroups up to 100%. And then turn off line and turn off fill so I don't have to see the polygrouping, but the polygrouping is there. And then if I click and drag on a tooth, it's going to just move that polygroup. I actually don't even need to have this turned on for this to work. I don't know why I even bothered with that. So now I can just click a tooth. So I'll grab the big ones and sort of move the big ones around a little bit to break up the symmetry. And I only have to break the symmetry on one side. So let's move this one back a little bit, maybe move that one. Let's zoom out and see what we've got. Ah, stop it. You frustrate me. Stop it. Jeez Louise. Here we go. Come back. There we go. All right. And move this back. Okay. Now I can just go in with smaller move brush. Move these around. Make some changes there. These look like mistakes. I want to move those over. And move these over. Scooch this around. Definitely want to make sure that these little ones coming out are on the sides. So like other books. So like other things to sort of like get ideas from. So there was like design books, like books on graphic design are really good because people often neglect that.
Yep.
Books on psychology and culture and phobias and things like that are really good. Like what people, like thinking about what people have unconscious hangups about. Like you're like when you're doing this sort of thing, you can be like a psychiatrist to a certain degree. Like you can be like, you can play on, people's
Their emotions.
emotions. Yeah, and know that you're doing it. Like
Yeah, of
like
course. It's
be
intentional.
conscious of what you're doing. Like I feel like sometimes it's like almost a little mischievous or a little like I know I get a kick out of it. I get a kick out of it because like to me like also like something that has always struck me is like the things that bother people or freak people out have never really bothered me. I've never been scared of monsters. I
Yep.
always thought that I was on their side and they wouldn't like hurt me. I think Guillermo del Toro said something similar recently, and Clive Barker said something back in the 80s in an interview that I read when I was like 9 years old. He's like, I've never been afraid of monsters because monsters just represent the things that people are afraid of, and they're my friends. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I really like that. And monsters are like they're like beautiful outsiders. Their monsters are like tragic. And I just, yeah, I think it's kind of nice to think of yourself almost as like almost kind of like a poet for monsters. I don't know. I'm getting pretentious and weird because it's
No,
getting
no,
late
it's get
because
out
it's,
and date. On you go.
but yeah, like I mean that's the thing. Like I don't ever set out necessarily like left to my own devices to say I want to make something really scary. I
Hmm.
set out to say I want to make something that I think is beautiful. But the things like a lot of the things that I think are beautiful, like I find beauty in a lot of like strange things, and so I'll take like I think Bogey Lady is beautiful. I think I love her. I love the shapes. I love the idea, and I like you know it's just a little thing that I was kind of like tweaking in my sketchbook at night, and I was just like, oh, this will be fun. But like I look for like beautiful shapes and things that make me like happy to look at them. So like I just remember when I was little, people would be like, why do you make such ugly things? And I've never thought of them as ugly, even
Yeah.
like you know
Do
I've
you
never thought of them as ugly.
do you think when it comes to like since we're talking about this theme of I guess like emotions and getting across that kind of connection between the monster and the audience watching them, do you think it's always just this may sound obvious, but it's making it as relatable as possible, so giving it those human characteristics is the main one that makes it stand out, or do you think it's the unique design that makes it more terrifying? What do you think it's, or is it a kind of a balance of the
Well,
two?
sometimes things can be really upsetting if there's nothing to identify with. Like Jaws is really scary. Sharks can be really scary because
Yeah.
there's nothing human in there to identify with. Then you can't identify with the eyes. There's nothing. The eyes are black. When I worked on the movie Eight-Legged Freaks, the director Roland Emmerich wanted to make the spiders. He asked us to make the spiders have frowny eyes in our sculptures.
Yeah.
I was a practical sculptor. I was a clay sculptor on that show, and it was. I know why he did it. You know, it was a broad stroke. It was like his style, and it makes sense. But when I was working on it, I was like, wow, that makes the spider somehow less scary because it humanizes it. It
Hmm.
makes it it makes it grr angry instead of I am in service to my instinct to eat you. It's like there's no rationalizing with an instinctual kind of drive that's coming at you to eat you.
Yep.
Hey, that just happened right there where that the damn standard shot off in a weird direction. Maybe that's what that question was about. Yeah, that happens to me, and I've never fixed it. I just undo and redo my stroke.
Perfect. Thanks for diving
Mhm.
into that. We've actually got two more questions that just came in last minute, so we've still got plenty of time. So, question is, when creating a creature from scratch, is there a specific checklist you go through before finalizing the sketch and heading to ZBrush?
And heading to ZBrush.
So, let me read. I'll read it again. So when creating a creature from scratch, is there a specific checklist you go through before finalizing the sketch and heading to ZBrush? So, I guess this is all before. So, just like the getting the rough
No,
idea.
no, I'm going to turn my thumbnail off. No. I mean, I don't. I mean, often I will just start something in ZBrush. I don't necessarily start outside of ZBrush.
Hmm.
So yeah, no checklist. I don't overthink it. Don't overthink these things.
Yeah.
Don't make these things harder than they have to be. Make cool things. I
Hmm.
mean, you don't have to get all philosophical about it. I'm a little embarrassed about how philosophical I've gotten tonight, but the you don't even get so philosophical about it. Just have fun, make cool stuff, make stuff that makes you happy to look at. Like like just make things that you like first and
Yep.
foremost. And if you do something that you find exciting to look at, even if it's just for a couple days, and then when you look at it again, you're like, crap, I see everything I want to fix. I mean, that's fine. Just worry about that. And also everybody's process is going to be different. Like there's like real basic stuff that's real consistent. Like, use reference. I also tell you nobody uses reference as much as they should, and a lot of people don't use it as often as we like to lead people to believe that we do.
Yeah.
So don't feel bad if you don't always find yourself looking at your reference. You should just remember to look at it. But yeah, I mean that's a thing. Um, and like form, like don't get caught up in little details and stuff, but like don't stress so much about like, and I know it's easy to say like, but like don't it's easier said than done, but like don't stress too much about like what do I need to do to get a job? What do I need to do for this, for that? Just do work that is good and exciting. And if you're the first person, like you're the first person you need to please with it, you know, and
Yeah.
look at work and get feedback from professionals. Watch out for getting work feedback from weird like strangers on Facebook. Try and get some like, you know, maybe if you can sign up for a Patreon or something with somebody who can give you critique, or take a class where you're getting feedback from somebody directly that you know who the feedback's coming from.
Yeah.
That's real helpful. But like when I was in school, like I remember I was like stressed. I was like, man, dude, maybe I should just like do a 3D generalist demo reel. And my friend was like, because he knew that wasn't what I wanted to do. And there's nothing wrong with being a 3D generalist, don't get me wrong. But he's
Hmm.
like, but then you might get a job doing that. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a good point. So like, don't worry so much like getting a job. Worry about like getting the job you want.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes back to that asking about, for things. And I know it sounds quite privileged, but like seriously, don't be afraid to say this is the thing I want to do, and I'm going to like go for this particular thing, and I'm going to give myself every opportunity to make that happen, and then ask for things, and be ready and willing to get feedback on it.
So,
Um,
like speaking on this topic, so like when it comes to, I guess, when it comes to like personal work and it comes to, I guess, getting the job, at the end of the day, we all love doing our personal work, but at the end of the day, we want to get a job out of it. Do you think people put too much, how can I say it, like they rely on the demands of the studio more than their actual creative freedom, like their ability just to make their own work? Do you think they should focus on just making their own work first before actually caring about the studio?
I mean, I guess that's down to like, I mean, maybe this what the studios want is what people want to do. Like, maybe people are really into doing like, you know, I want to do like photorealistic portrait busts of
Hmm.
people in ZBrush, which would be, you know, great portfolio pieces for doing digi doubles or whatnot. So yeah, I mean, like with I got to be reasonable. I mean, people, you got to
Of course.
work, you got to have,
Yeah.
but like, I mean, remember you got into this because you like doing it,
Yeah.
you know, not to be
You want
I
to make
should
it a career.
yeah. So, you know, yeah.
Thanks for asking,
Huh?
for answering that. Right, let's see what else we've got. Right,
So
on you
go.
go. I'll let you finish.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So Daniel was just saying, sorry for moving to the teeth quickly. Could you please re-show what you do after you have turned on polygroups and autogroups? Remember, you increase the size of the brush considerably afterwards.
Yeah, I just went to the brush and auto masking and turned on mask by polygroups, turned that up to 100. And then I went to the polygroup menu and pressed auto group. And that gave every tooth its own polygroup.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Hmm.
And
So,
then,
sorry, go on.
no, on you go. You can finish.
I wanted to talk about what I'm doing. So because it's one thing to watch, but I think another thing to like
Oh, of
have some
course.
explanation of why I'm doing what I'm doing. So again, I'm trying to sort of catch shadow, and again, I move my light around a lot more than I'm doing during this because I one thing I can multitask, but I can't like triple task apparently. You can set a hotkey for interactive light. If you go to Z plugin, miscellaneous utilities, there's a button here called interactive light where you can then move your light around interactively. So setting a hotkey for that is super helpful. Pressing the escape key gets you out of it. Um, my hotkey for that is Control P. So if I just press Control P wherever I am, I can then move the light around. So this is really good because I like to make shapes that are different under different lighting conditions. Like sometimes a muscle, I don't want it to be visible under all lighting conditions. I want to see it as the light moves around it. You know, that's like really important for getting subtlety of form. Is like sometimes things disappear under certain lighting conditions and then appear under others. So moving your light around gives you the opportunity to sort of see that, like here. And I've got X symmetry turned off right now intentionally. I'm just adding some variation under this thoracic arch, and I'm going to knock this back using the Alt key. And I'm going to turn my X symmetry back on, and I'm going to bring this head of the deltoid on the character out and down because I've lost this sort of tucking here that should be happening. And then I kind of really want to fix this shadow here. It's bugging me. So I'm going to bring that clavicle forward a little bit. Oops, doing it again. Bring this down. And I'm going to take my clay tubes brush and I'm going to fill this out just a little bit, like so. Take the clay tubes brush and I'm going to knock back a plane here. And turn my brush size down, just give it a little bit of smooth. And by the way, notice I'm at 165,000 faces. Like that's where I am right now. I haven't divided it up, but I think twice. So I have to give my fingers a rest really quick. They're starting to tingle. Sometimes I hold my pen too tight. I've always done that. I hold my pencil too tight too. And so
No,
like,
thanks for everything you've done. You've been talking for 2 hours, sculpting, answering questions, you name it, all together. So I appreciate your time.
mm-hmm. My pleasure. Thank you. Any other questions? I think you were about to pose another question.
So the last question that came through is from Nick, and he was just asking, would you advise to travel?
Like just in general, like
Um,
travel.
he's also put smiley face at the end.
Yeah, yeah. I think traveling is great. Especially like if you're in the UK. For now, at least, you can travel
Yeah,
to Europe with some ease. Um, Traveling to other places, yeah, absolutely. Traveling is wonderful. I hate traveling until I do it.
yeah,
I'm a nana. I like to be at home. I'm a homebody. But then once I get somewhere, I'm like, oh, I'm really glad I came here. So I had a wonderful time in Corfu about this time last year. It was really amazing to see like some of my favorite works. Like one of my favorite sculptors is believe the first named sculptor is Praxiteles. It's a Greek sculptor, classical Greek sculptor,
hmm,
and sort of created one of the first sort of canons of, or was credited with one of the first canons of proportion that we use. And like Praxiteles, his work was just, I mean, I loved his work when I encountered it in school, and and just seeing a lot of things that I had learned about in art history up close. Another thing too, like I go to Paris with some regularity. I love Paris, and I never thought that I would go to the Pompidou, the Centre Pompidou, because I am not one of those people that says I hate modern art, because I don't like it when people say that, because for one thing, modern art hasn't been a thing since the 1940s. Like modern art, like that, when people say that, it sort of gives away that they don't know what modern art actually is. It's
yeah,
postmodern art now, or post-modernity. But the point is, I don't dislike quote unquote modern art or non-representational or abstraction or abstract expressionism. I don't dislike it. It's just I'm not necessarily passionate about it in the same way that I am about going to the Musée d'Orsay or whatnot.
yeah,
And then one day in Paris, I was like, oh, I'll go to the Centre Pompidou. Um, they had a Dali thing going on the top floor that was the huge line for it. And I don't really rate, I like Dali, but I'm just, I'm not super into him, and a little overexposed. And there's other, like Max Ernst a lot, and Rene Magritte. So I was like, well, I'm going to look at the general collection. And I was absolutely stunned at the emotional impact that it had to stand in front of abstract expressionist pieces that I had to learn about in class. I was tested on. I knew the dates they were made. I knew the artist who made them. I had lived with them for a term. I knew this work. Like I had an entire term that was just about 20th century art. But when I stood in front of a Rothko and I got it, I was like, oh wow, okay, that's overwhelming. Or I stood in front of an Ad Reinhardt, who's literally just a black square painted
yeah,
on another black square. And when I saw it in person, what I knew academically, I was like, he's playing with the temperatures of the blacks. He's playing with the fact that these two colors, or these two shades of black are different. When I saw them in person, I was like, wow, that's actually moving in a way I didn't expect it to be. And that was like, just from traveling, like, seeing some of these works of art that in the flesh, like going to the Louvre and seeing the huge line of people trying to get a photograph with the Mona Lisa.
hmm.
Uh,
All
if you're
these
ever
famous,
there,
yeah, you can't go wrong.
yeah, if you're ever there, I highly recommend walking past the Mona Lisa and looking at what's on the wall behind her, because that's Tiziano. And Tiziano was the Renaissance artist who was the genius for the Renaissance artists. He was the huge influence on all of them. Uh, he was an incredible colorist, an incredible painter, and it's always funny to me. I mean, I don't blame people because I'm the one that went to art school. A lot of these people didn't go to art school. They're they want to see this famous piece, and I went and saw the famous piece and took a selfie in front of it, making like a grossed out face. But like it's of course you want to see the Mona Lisa, but it's like seeing some of the other things there is just amazing, and
Yeah,
you get that opportunity when you travel. So yeah, traveling is good if you have the ability to do it, and if you're living here, it's a lot easier to travel than like me growing up in America. I could go to um, other parts of North America, like I could go to Canada and I could go to Mexico, um, and but I didn't like live there for a really long time. So it's like I didn't really start traveling until I left the United States. But
yeah,
it's much easier to travel. Like when I was in New Zealand, it would be very, very easy to go to Southeast Asia or go to Australia or some of the Pacific Islands, which is really nice too, because there's shapes in a lot of Tongan art and Maori art that's really amazing. But you should be always kind of careful with that too. If you're like, as a designer, you do have a responsibility not to sort of like lift things directly from like an actual culture and like make it into a fantasy thing. So
right.
don't be lazy, and because it can be it can be lazy to do things like that. You want to actually put some effort into it and make something new.
Yeah,
It's no problem being inspired by things, but I've seen a couple, and God, I can't get into that eye. Here we go. I'm going to touch the mesh there and it should zoom right into that. So, I've seen it when people take things like directly from an actual culture and then use it in a fantasy context. It's a bit like, nah, you could do
doesn't
better than
work
that.
as best. Yeah, you can always
Yeah, it's
interpret a
rude.
wee bit better. Yeah, of course, exactly.
Yeah, so it's like as designers, I mean, I don't want to like put people off. People go, "Oh man, it's social justice," but it's not that. It's just like being respectful and also just being a good designer. I think is like not just like copy pasting something. Like think
Yeah,
about what purpose it serves. Like why did that particular culture develop that particular thing? Like Richard Taylor at What a Workshop said something really cool. I didn't work on Avatar there. I was somebody asked me recently what I did on Avatar because I couldn't remember. I was like very low level at the time. I was like helping clean up models that were being scanned at Gentle Giant. But it was going on right before I got to Weta. And when I got to Weta, they had just finished Avatar. It was about to come out, and Richard was talking about doing the design work on it, and he said that the first thing that they thought about was he tasked everybody with designing the eating utensils for the Na'vi, because he's like, you can figure out so much about a culture if you know how they get together and socialize. How do they eat?
yeah.
And it's another thing too. Like, I mean, I do a lot of like naked monsters, and I was teaching my class, my Gnomon class last night. By the way, I teach at Gnomon, so I've got my. If you go to the Gnomon workshop, you can find my ZBrush Introduction to ZBrush 2020 video series. It's 20 hours long, and it's me talking.
20 hours,
Uh,
perfect.
yeah, 20 hours long. Everything that you could possibly want to know about ZBrush is probably in there. Um, so, um, oh, I lost my train of thought. What was I saying before I just plugged my
We were
Gnomon
talking
thing?
about different cultures and how
Different
its
cultures. Yeah, yeah,
impacts.
yeah, 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 yeah. So like how a culture gets together and eats or interacts with one another, you can really start to develop um, who they are from that.
Hmm.
Like last night I was doing my costume class and talking about, we end up doing a lot of like naked monsters, which is sort of like that's a creature. That's not necessarily something that has comes from a culture, but once you start putting costume on there and you can start contextualizing it and giving it a sense of its culture, where it's from and what it does, and like the way you choose to costume your character makes such a huge difference, and it says so much about it. I put eyelids on this because I got zoned out and didn't really think about it. I preferred it before, so I'm actually going to knock that back, and I'm going to step down my subdivision levels. This is a nice thing about these subdivision levels. I'm going to turn on transparency so I can see through my model. I'm going to step back up, and when you step down your subdivision levels and smooth and then step back up, it tries to reintroduce some of the shapes, and that can actually be that can have a really cool effect. I don't want to put eyelids on there because I actually did like the fact that you couldn't really identify with her eyes quite so much because they're so kind of insectoid. I think I'll keep these with the little lids on them, but I kind of like these being like, ugh, which one do I look at and why did none of them have emotions? Because you know, like the bogeyman is like the dude that hides in your closet and comes out and eats you as a kid. You know, like there's the bogeyman, and I thought,
The classics.
yeah, I was like, so the bogeyman must have like a sister, so that's why it's the bogey lady.
Like what you said there about literally thinking about the whole
That's too
story, like
bumpy.
I think that's one thing sometimes we forget to over or we tend to overlook. Like when you actually start thinking about what you said about the family, like the relationship between everything, how they were brought up, etc. Like adding all this elements of story to your character goes such a long way. And it's trying to get yourself in that mindset of to just think that way and make that a habit. Because like you said, it's the best way to explore and to become such a better artist if you're thinking these different questions.
Yeah, yeah. I've turned off X symmetry now, and I'm just introducing some asymmetry here. And this is something under normal circumstances they would have done much, much sooner, but I knew that we were operating under a time limitation. So if I worked asymmetrically, it would take me a little bit longer, and I just wanted to make sure that things came together faster. Also, I stepped down my subdivision levels and things were a little noisy here. There was just too much happening. So I took my smooth brush, turned down my Z intensity, and I'll smooth down here at a lower subdivision level and then step back up. And that has kind of the same effect as sort of running, you know, melting clay a little bit or just like smoothing things back just a little bit. So my X symmetry is still turned off. And take my move brush, hold the shift key down, and I can slide edges like this. So I can slide those faces around using that brush. And I'm going to take my standard brush and alpha 1 and catch a little bit of shadow here. This is all asymmetrical. I'm not doing this with symmetry turned on. I really like this edge right here. I'm going to take my clay tubes brush and just build up that little edge of that muscle there. That's the trapezius coming around and grabbing onto the clavicle. And we haven't spent a lot of time on the back, but let's come back here and let's just build up these pillars in the back of the neck here. And I'm doing this asymmetrically. I'm happy for that to be asymmetrical. I'm going to knock back a little plane here, knock back a little plane here. Not too terribly concerned with the back, because like I said, I work towards the area that I'm going to see. So I'm
Yeah,
just imagining that this is going to be seen probably in 3/4 view. And I'll save my work. And then,
amazing work.
oh, thank you.
Incredible. Really
Got a Z
appreciate
plugin.
everything you said.
Oh, thanks. Do I have time to do one more thing?
Yeah, yeah, sure. On you go.
Cool. So it sounds like we're coming to the end. I can't see my clock easily.
Take your time.
So what I want to do is I want to take it out of its
I was going to also say as well, you said something there really interesting was because this was a habit that when I was starting out, another thing that I feel that I should have done more of was actually rotating around the model and actually
mm-hmm,
approaching it from all these different angles rather than just kind of getting stuck with the front view all the time
mm-hmm.
and the side view. Like, believe it or not, I always used to forget the top view. I never really looked down from the top perspective. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that can go such a long way in terms of actually changing the design and the way you think.
Yeah, I think my ZBrush might have crashed. No, it didn't. Okay, good. That scared me.
Oh, the great thing
I
is this is all recorded, so that's the main thing. You didn't miss anything there.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. I'm going to start sharing my screen again because I paused my screen share. Okay, there we go. So what I did was I went to Z plugin
Hmm.
and I pressed T-pose mesh. This creates a temporary model um, where everything, if we go to our subtool menu, everything is dropped down into one one subtool. Sorry, let me get that off the screen. There we go. Into one subtool. And what that allows us to do is then pose with our subtools in a single mesh, and then we can transfer that pose data back over to our original model. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right, so what we'll do is we will mask out the head and turn on X symmetry. And I want to give just a little bit of like a spiral, I call it a spiral composition from portrait drawing where it's like there's a little bit of rotation happening in the character. I just want there to be something other than just I'm looking straight ahead. So I'm going to take my transpose line, move my transpose line down like this, so it's running along the axis of that neck. and I'm going to click and drag. Oops, I've got X symmetry turned on. Oh, that's kind of interesting. That created a neat shape, but let's undo that. There we go. And I just want to make sure my X symmetry is turned off. It is. So I'm going to click and drag to get a little turn to the head there. Now this can be tricky. Sometimes I can get away with this. If I take this and drag it well off the model, like well off, way out here, I can hold down the Alt key and then click in here and sometimes get a nice rotation. Depends on the overall shape of that head, whether or not it introduces deformations that I don't want. But that's not too terrible. That's cool. I just wanted to get a little bit of a pose or a little bit of an angle there.
Yeah, awesome.
Then I think I will look at my silhouette. I'm going to go to my lights. I'm going to bring my key light up here. And okay, I am going to mask the head out again. And I want to make like the shoulders, I'm going to have to narrow again. And I'm going to do that right now while they're still symmetrical. They got too big, so I'm going to turn on my X symmetry. I'm going to bring these in, and I want to mask out, because now that I'm no longer in Dynamesh mode, I neglected to mention this. I was keeping the arms away from the body intentionally because I didn't want Dynamesh to glue them together. Totally forgot to mention this. So now that I'm not in Dynamesh anymore, I could do this. I can take the shoulders and do what I intended to do, which was to take my transpose line and then sort of move these in and then rotate them down. Oops, I have a little bit that's erroneously unmasked right there. Ah, dang it. There we go. Mask that. And so I will rotate these down, move these down, maybe rotate them a little bit like that. There we go. That's better. And I'll just hit that with a tiny little bit of smooth, tiny little bit right there, tiny little bit right there. There we go. So I just wanted to narrow that. And the reason I didn't do that before is because this would have glued it together in Dynamesh. All right, so now I can mask the head again. Mask that neck. I kind of like where this go. I might finish this off if I can find the time.
Continue the sculpt. That's
Yeah,
always like a
set
great
at a
thing.
later date. I do a class demo every or twice a week, and so I've got a folder full of class demos that I've done that I are pretty much unfinished because you only have like a couple hours to do them. And so I always think like if I'm at a loss for something to do, I can always revisit my class demos, pick one of those out, and then work on it. So let's see, I might go to transpose rotate, draw that transpose line. Let's turn off X symmetry because we don't want to be posing symmetrically right now. So I'll take this line and move it into the body like so. And sometimes it can be helpful when I'm doing this to go to the masking menu and turn off view mask. But be careful because you may very well forget that the mask is there or not be able to find your mask again. So I just want to see what it looks like if I offset the shoulders a little bit. Rotate. And I want to see what happens if I take this and, oops, draw a transpose line here. Hold down the Alt key, and I can rotate that eye up a little bit.
Oh, that's an interesting touch.
It's cute. I like that. And I don't want them to be identical, but I might give this one a little rotation. I need to make sure that this line is running straight down the axis of it, and it wasn't, so that's why that rotated the wrong way. So we'll do this, bring this down here, bring this up here, and then rotate that a little bit like that. Oh, that's cute. I like that. I like that. I
Do
mean,
you
maybe it's not
think
your definition of cute, but it's mine. So I'm going to go to Z plugin and I'm going to do T pose to sub T. And then that should transfer all that data over, all that pose information over to the subtools. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Sorry, you were about to ask something.
I was just going to ask, do you think when it comes to breaking symmetry, it's better when it comes to just starting off early on, just to break it as soon as possible, just to kind of get out of that kind of being so comfortable with symmetry on?
Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't break it to this degree, but I would go in and while it's in a neutral position, I would sculpt asymmetrical elements. So I would establish the skeletal structure, which will be changing as I'm going. Like, I would probably, I'm going to go, when I revisit this later, I'll get rid of the pose and go back and I want to adjust things. I want to give more of a sense of there to be a skeletal structure under these eyes and things like that.
Yeah.
So I would do that symmetrically. And then other things like the wrinkles, I would not do symmetrically. So, but yeah, I would break symmetry early, but I wouldn't put it into a pose early. But also don't fall into the trap of thinking that, posing is just taking your symmetrical model and posing it. Once
Hmm.
something starts being posed, then it's changing the anatomy completely. You have to continue sculpting after it's been posed because it's going to create things like, the creases at the neck here. I'm trying to deepen these creases where it's turning its neck, or she's turning her neck towards this direction. So I'm trying to increase those creases. The sternocleidomastoid muscle right here, the people don't often think of this, but you see this muscle when it's not in action, when it's not being used, because the one that's firing is this one over here, which is getting shorter and fatter, and this is the one that's not firing, and we see it because the skin's stretching over it. So I might accentuate this sternomastoid, maybe. So things like that. I probably want to like let this flash accordion here a little bit more.
Yeah, thanks for diving into that, because at a day, it's always about kind of getting out your comfort zone and realizing when to know to kind of make the next step and
Mm-hmm.
just learn how to pose. Like posing is another thing. It's super important. It's not just about making just the creature in its T pose, like you said early on. Like there's a whole kind of extra level, like you said, when it comes to portfolio. Like we want to see people posing their characters, posing their creatures, giving them that extra value, that extra story, and making it actually finished.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. So I'm gonna scooch this over, and yeah. So um, cool. And then if you want to see translucency inside of ZBrush, by the way, you can go to your wax modifier and turn the strength up, and then go to render properties and turn on wax preview, and then you can probably like fill this with a basic kind of base color. So do something like that, go to RGB, color fill object, and that just gives us a base color, and then we can go in and sort of tweak it around a little bit. Maybe we'll warm it up,
Incredible.
and
It's coming to life.
yeah, and maybe we'll go over to the eyes here. Let's select those eyes, and what I'll do is select I'm going to go to my basic material 2, and I'm going to copy the material. And I never use basic materials, so working with materials in ZBrush is weird. You have to copy paste over existing materials to make new ones. So I'm going to paste material here. So now I've got basic material 3, and I'm going to make sure that I have the eye selected and go to material, color fill object, and I actually want to make these black. So go to color, fill object. Oh, make sure mRGB is turned on. Color, fill object. There we go. And then I'll go to my material settings for basic material 3, go to modifiers, and then turn my specular up so they're super shiny. And then I'm going to sharpen that specular like that. And I'm going to then go to basic material 2, and that's on the body. And I'm going to go to my material settings. Oops. And I'm going to open the specular curve, and I'm going to broaden it so it's a little bit more like skin. And I'm going to turn the specular down so it's not quite so specky. There we go. And then I'll take my standard brush, and I'm only at 36,000 faces. How many faces subdivisions do I have on the body? No, I'm on 165,000 faces with 3 subdivision levels. So I might need to add one if I want to do any sort of poly painting, but I'll take the spray stroke, and I will take the little dots alpha, and I'll grab the base color, and I'll warm up the base color, saturate the base color, and make sure my brush is set to RGB, and come in here and just start painting.
So what I'll do, folks, everyone who's tuning in, thanks. It's great seeing everyone tuning in, and we have great numbers today. So thanks once again, everyone who's watching. So we'll go for like another 9 minutes, and then
Yeah.
that'll be it. So I appreciate everyone,
Mhm.
and such an amazing sculpt, such an amazing
Aw.
presentation. I appreciate all the time and everything you said. I know I've said it many times, but it's everyone's been saying that they've. Kirsty was saying that she's written 5 pages of notes so far based on this presentation. So that she's
Awesome.
learned a lot from it. So it's great to hear.
Well, you guys go to maddiemonster.com. That's MADDIE monster.com. You can find me there. You'll find all my social media there. Add me on Facebook. I don't use Twitter a lot, but I use Instagram. You'll
Mm-hmm.
find all that on my Maddie Monster, which is my art station. Add me on ArtStation if you like. Add me on Facebook. Send me a message or something. And yeah, keep in touch. Like it'll be cool. And also, if you subscribe to my blog on my art station, I put up a lot of stuff there in terms of just like book recommendations and whatnot. So I'm just adding some variation to this, some modulation to it. I would paint it with a lot more. I mean, we've got 9 minutes, so I'm not going to be able to paint it the way I would normally paint it, but I just want to put some variables in there. So I'm going to take the base color again and space that base color on stuff, and then I'm going to go to masking, mask by cavity, turn cavity profile into a straight line, and mask by cavity. And that'll give me a cavity mask like that. I will control click to invert it, control click on it to feather it. I will turn off view mask. Whoops, masking. Where'd it go? Wait, come back, come back, come back, come back. Ah, turn off view mask so the mask is still there. Go back to my spray stroke and that warmer version. I'm going to desaturate that a little bit. And I'm going to just paint this. Let me turn my RGB intensity down. I don't want to be painting with 100% RGB intensity. And this is just painting into the recesses a little bit, just giving me a little bit of something, something. Paint that down in there. That's nice. I like that. Paint that in there. And then if you are out of time and you want to give your model a little bit of tooth so that specular isn't so perfect, this is a nice cheat. Like if I was going to take this and render it and paint on top of it, I would go to Surface, Noise, and then I would turn my noise strength up, find the right scale for it.
I always use noise. I literally use it far too much.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong with noise.
And don't necessarily make it the right scale for pores because it can end up looking noisy. Go figure, it's noise. But it can actually throw it off.
Mm-hmm.
But there you go. That just gives you just that little bit of tooth. And I'll zoom out and let's turn off the thumbnail. Oops, that was alternate that I turned off. And let's zoom in a little bit so we don't see that weird kind of I'm missing half my body thing. And I didn't put I still need to continue working from the bust line down, but I'll go to render, BPR shadow, and turn angle up and set raise to something like 24. And make sure my light is at about 11 o'clock. I want it to be real dramatic, so I'm going to put it way up here. And then I'll take my rim light here and let's change the color of that. Like, what's a good color? Maybe it's like there's like a night light in the corner that's kind of blue.
I'm
So I'll
getting
make it sort
Stranger
of that.
Things vibes right now.
There we go. So something like that. BPR render. Oh shit, let's take it into Keyshot. I forgot I had turned on Keyshot. But hey, we get to see it under Keyshot with all that on there. So, all right. That wasn't what I intended. So we'll go back to ZBrush really quickly here. Just a second. But since she's come in here, yeah, it didn't actually transfer over. Couldn't connect to the external render. Go to render. All right, yeah, now it's rendering in here.
But like I said, folks, earlier on, this is getting recorded, so make sure to check it out if you guys want to go back to a specific part. And we've got even more masterclasses, as always, coming up throughout the year. We've got more sculpture next week as well, so stay tuned.
Almost there. There we go. So we get a nice dramatic kind of
That's perfect.
largy kind of face.
What a way to end the masterclass. I appreciate everything that you've done today. Thank you so much once again for coming on. And like Madeleine said, make sure to check her out, follow her on social media. And like I said, all these masterclasses go online. You can find it under caveacademy.com. So that's the masterclasses section. And also, we've got our dailies as well. So if you guys want to get your artwork critiqued, etc., make sure to submit. So that's Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. You have the chance to get your work critiqued from all the great artists in the industry. And Jay will also be taking part and helping out on that side of things. So make sure to check it out. And we will see you guys in the next masterclass. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for being here, everybody. Thanks
Bye
so
for now.
much. Bye.